Hello there good people, what is up? Welcome, my name is Marco and I'm a full stack developer. Today I want to build a URL shortener, and this is quite an interesting project because you get to see all the logic behind these kind of shorteners. As always, I will split this project into 3 videos, and this is to keep things separated and not get confusing. In the first part, I will build the markup and the styling using HTML and CSS. The design is simple and very minimal, nothing out of this world, but it can work out. Next week, in part 2, I will focus on the server side, building the routes and the logic for the API. And last, in part 3, I will deploy the app. There are tons of ways to do that. I am going to use the simplest, in my opinion, which is also free. And that is not a bad deal. In my opinion, for full stack developers, it is very important to get to a point of creating a web application and then deploy it. Mainly because it is a beautiful and interesting part of this job, and it is also quite important to learn. Don't worry, I will guide you through the process step by step, but I strongly suggest you to do it for at least one of your projects. On a side note, next week I'm also going to release a brief crash course for JavaScript. I'll go over the basics and what I think is important to get started. And also I will reference other videos where you could get a deeper learning of this super useful language, so don't miss it. Okay, back to the project. Let's start with VS Code. Beautiful, so now I'm in my main directory, and in here I'm going to create my client folder first. In the client folder I'm going to create the public folder. This is just the way I like to organize things, and also the views folder. Now in my public folder I'm going to have basically my style CSS and also the index.js, so my JavaScript and the styling. On the other hand, in the views folder, I'm going to have my index.html. Beautiful. Okay, now I have all of them. Let's try and zoom in a little bit. Okay, so this is the main structures of this project. So let's start with the HTML, with the markup. Okay, so I'm at shortcut, just an exclamation mark, and we have a boilerplate HTML page. Now in here I can say, what should I call it? Let's call it shortly. Why not? URL shortener. I hope this is spelled correctly. Yeah, it looks like it. Then I want to link my CSS, which is like this. But it's not in the same folder, so I have to tweak it a little bit. So I have to go up one folder, go into public, and select the style. Beautiful. Now I should have everything I need. And let's see if it works correctly, just like this. I need to run this with live server. And I have it. Hello there. Oh wow, it works. Beautiful. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, as always, I want to have a container, which is going to be basically the main container for everything, so that I can control it better and be responsive. And then I'm gonna have a page title at the top of the page, and it's going to have an h1, like shortly. And also the minimalistic URL shortener. Minimalistic. Does this word exist? I don't know. Maybe. Well, you'll decide. Then I'm going to have the form, which is going to be just one input, but I want the form to be there. Just gonna get rid of the action, I don't need that. And inside here, I'm going to have one input, which is gonna be of type text. Of course, the name is going to be the URL. In the ID as well, URL. You think I should put a label? I don't know, let's see. And we're gonna have a placeholder like google.com. Why not? Yeah. And then I need a button, and this button will have a class of button so that I can style it better. And for now, just write shorten here, but I want to do something else later. But now the form is done. Now what I need is content. So basically the container of all the URLs. And this div can have a class of shorten URL. Actually, I want to do something like this first. Just place an h2 and let's put URLs. Why not? Now inside this shorten URL, I'll have a link, which for now is not going anywhere, but this is where I'm going to put my shorten URL. So I need to give it a name, not an ID, but a class maybe. Maybe shorten URL. Why not? No, it already exists. Let's go shorten URL link. Yeah, I like it. And it's going to be like something like this. So shortly and .com and a slug, something like this. It's okay. And after this, I'm going to have a span. And this is going to be for the clipboard, because I want to put a clipboard there so that you can just push it and it copy the URL to the clipboard. And I'm not going to have anything inside. So let's save this and let's actually multiply this like 2 times, save it. And if I watch my CSS now, my page now, it looks something like this, which is, well, it's a bit ugly. It's certainly minimalistic. This is for sure. But now I want to style it. And I think that if I inspect this with the DevTools, I have everything I need actually. Yeah. So my container is containing the whole page. The page title is right there at the top. Then the form with the input and the button. And then the content where the URLs are going to be placed. And of course, these are going to be the individual rows. So the markup is done. Nothing is missing. Everything is working fine. So now I can start looking at the styling. And how do I want to do this? Let's close this and let's put it side by side. Perfect. So that I can see live what I am doing. So the first thing I always like to do is select everything, included the pseudo elements, so the before and after, and get rid of that predefined margin and padding. So I'm gonna set it to 0 and the padding as well. It's going to 0. And then I'm also giving a box size and border box. This is what I like to do to start off with. And if I save it, everything gets squished in like this. So I remove the margin and the padding. Yoo-hoo. Then I'm gonna address the HTML, so the document itself and the body. And I'm gonna give it a font size, 16 pixels. And this is basically to say, what is my unit? My one rem is going to be 16 pixels. So this is going to be the basic. And also I need to give it a height of 100%. And then what I want to do is to import the fonts, because I want 2 different fonts. For this one, I want kind of a stylish font. And for the rest, I want another font. So let's see if I have it here. For this, I'm going to use the import statement in CSS because, I don't know, it's convenient. I like it. And I'm going to import this font family, Playfair Display, and I'm going to import the 400 and the 700 weight. So the regular and the bold. And this is going to be my title. For the body, I mean, for the all the rest is going to be this family, so Sans Pro, which is a sans serif, so it's more readable, and also the regular and the bold. Okay, so last thing to do is to set the body to what I want. I'm just gonna give it a color of the text of black, and font family of Source Some Pro, this thing here. Just copy paste, why not? Okay, and if I save it, yeah, okay, you see that everything now has this font, but I don't want that. But yeah, I can think about that later. Now let's address some global styling. For example, the H1. I want the H1 to have a margin bottom of 1 rem so that it can breathe a little bit. Then I'm gonna give it a font size, and for this I'm going to use the clamp function. And this is a CSS function that takes 3 arguments. The first is like the minimum width. In this case, I set like 2 viewports, 2% of the viewport. And this is like the smallest it can get. Then an optimal size, I want it 4 rem, and then a maximum size. So it cannot grow any larger than 6 rem. And then for some letter spacing, I can use 5 pixels, just like this. Okay, and we should see, yeah, like this. So it's quite visible, and you see that the letter spacing is quite far apart. Another global is the p tag, and I don't know why, but I want to do it a little bit faded, like this. And it's probably to create that kind of contrast between the title and the actual paragraph. It looks nice, why not? Another global style is going to be the link. So A and A visited. This is a pseudo class, and it basically represents when you click on a link, and then it becomes purple. Usually, if I do like this now all of this will become purple because I've already visited it. And I don't want this to become purple. I want to inherit the color. Actually, I want to give it a color. And I like this color right here, which is a light blue. Why not? If I save it, yeah, it's this light blue. And also I want to get rid of the decoration because I want to control it, okay? And one thing that I like to do on the links is on hover, I add the text decoration as underline. Basically, that's going to be an underline. But you can also control the text decoration style. There it is. And I'm going to be dotted. This is just a personal preference. It's just, you know, stylistical. And if I hover it, you can see that there is a dotted line right in there. What if I zoom in a little bit here? Yeah, maybe you can see it better. Like this, you see? They're dots. Yoo-hoo. Okay, now I think that it's the time to set all the styling, the main styling. So first of all, I'm gonna address the container. And since I use this as basically my responsive div, I always want to set a width, and I'm gonna use the min function. And this min function is super convenient because it gives me the minimum of the 2 end members. So either 90% or let's give it 720 pixel, okay? So basically what it says is if 720 pixel is bigger than the 90% of the screen, of the viewport, well then pick 90%. In this basically transform the entire page into a responsive mode without me adding any additional like media queries or anything. So this function is absolutely sweet. And of course, since I want it like center, I'm gonna put a margin of 0 auto so that it's nicely centered. And if I do this, I should see exactly this. Now there is a little bit of margin here because the screen size is not that large, but this thing will never grow any larger than 720 pixel. Beautiful. Now, what do we have here? Let's go from top to bottom. So the page title. This is the page title. I select it, and what I want to do is first of all, I'm gonna give it a font family of the beautiful font, which is play fair display. Nice. And if you take a look at it, man, isn't this beautiful? Nice. Okay. Another thing, I want to give it a margin of 3 rems so that I can create some spacing. And remember, the title is this. It's all of this. It's not just the H1. So basically, this is going to have a margin on the top and the bottom, and of course on the side. So it's going to be slightly off. If I save it, you can see it, yeah. So that I can create some space. The page can breathe, whatever that means. And also, I'm gonna align the page to the right. I'm gonna align the title to the right, so it goes right there. It's a bit asymmetric, which is super neat, super neat. Okay, next we have this. This is the form, and there's gonna be the input inside, but I'm just gonna address the form now, which I call short form, I think. Yep. Am I giving a padding? Yeah, why not? Let's say 125 rem and 0. So top and bottom 175 and 0 left and right. Another thing that I want to keep this, and this is quite important, is that the margin bottom is going to be 2 rem. So that it creates some spacing as well. And nice. Now I want to address the form itself. And I address it like this. Now, I could have selected just the form. This is a very simple page, and I know there's going to be just one form. But I like to address it like this. It makes it I'm more confident doing it like this. So basically I'm saying inside this div, address the form. So just that one. If I had to add new forms and stuff like that, I know that this styling will not affect those. And I think it's better. So the first thing that I wanted to say is that there's going to be a display of flex. And also, I'm going to give it a min height of 2.5 rem. And also I want to give it a gap between the button and the input. And it's going to be something very small like this. Beautiful, nice. Now, as you can see, this grew larger because with display flex, the element wants to take the entire height. And this is exactly what I want. Because if I now change, like, I don't know, I said it's too small and I want to say 3 rems. I don't have to change anything else. The input and the button will grow accordingly. So I don't have to go to the button and set the height and the input. It makes it a bit more convenient, okay? Now that I have this short form, I can address the actual input. Now that I have the input, I can say that it's a flex of 1. So it's gonna take basically all the space available. It's gonna grow as large as it wants. If I save now, you're gonna see that it's gonna grow as large as it wants. Another thing that I can say is the padding, and it's not gonna have any padding top and bottom, but maybe on the side it's like 7.5, just like this. Font family is gonna be inherit, so that I can have that beautiful sans serif. The font size as well, I'm gonna put 1 rem, and I'm gonna give it a border just to good measure. This is going to be solid, and it's going to be like a faded black. And of course a border radius, because I like curved borders, and this is going to be 0.5 rems. Let's see what it looks like. Nice. Very, very beautiful. I like it. Now we can start styling the button. This button right here. And if I remember correctly, I just gave it the class of button right here, so that I can, yeah, pretty simple. So the button will have, let's set a minimum width so that, I don't know, it might be relevant. And then let's set a padding. I don't want it top and bottom, but I want left and right. And in this case, I'm going to use EMs, which is relative to the parent element of this button. Of course, the font size will be 1 rem, so it's 16 pixels. I know because I've set it. Then I'm going to have a font weight inside of 700, so that is bold. A background color of black is going to be pitch black, and the color of the text is going to be white. Okay, nice contrast there. I also want a cursor pointer. And this basically, if I save it now, it's going to give me this beautiful hand when I hover over it, so that the user knows that he can click it. And of course, I want to get rid of that hideous border. And I also want to give it a radius of, to be consistent, of 5 rems as the input, so they look alike, like this. Beautiful. What I can do now, because it's something I want to do later, I can just give it a position of relative. For now, this is not going to do anything for now. Another thing, which is a stylistical choice, is to provide an active class or pseudo class. Active is basically when you click it, and when I click it, I want to scale it down like 0.95, so it becomes a little bit smaller, and also the background color is going to be black, but I don't know, a little bit faded, like 0.8, I don't know. So if I press it, you can see that it gets smaller and it gets a little bit lighter, like it's a very dark gray, but it's not black. Beautiful. Okay, now it's time for the content, which is basically this. Let's see what we can do with this. Now, the content, we could give it some contrast, and to be very minimal about it, I can give it a box shadow. I can set 0, then 5 pixels, and let's say 10 pixels as well, and a very faded black, 0.4. Okay, so this is way all around. And what this means is basically, this is the offset on the x-axis, so the horizontal. This is the offset on the y, so the vertical. And as you can see, I set 5 pixels. On the top, there's basically no shadow at all, and it's all on the bottom because I set it to go lower. And this is the blur radius. So the smaller this number is, the less the blur, basically. And this is the color of the shadow. If I put red, it's going to be red. And in this case, it's fine. Of course, this looks ugly, so I'm going to give it a padding all around of 125 rem. And also a border radius, because I like it, 0.5 rem. Nice. And let's set a height of max content. This is a very nice property, which basically means it's not height auto, which works in a different way, but basically the height of this div is always going to be basically the size of the content inside. So if the content grows, so it gets larger, the height of this will grow as well. If it shrinks, it will shrink the height. It will decrease the height. So it's very convenient. Okay, now what we're left to do is basically to address just these small links, because I don't like what they look like. So I call this shorten URL, not like this, but like this. And shorten URL is basically this row. There is one link, which is this, and there should be also a span. Let's inspect this. And if you see, this is the entire div, and I have the link and the span. Now the span is not taking anything because there's nothing inside, but there will be soon enough. And in here, I just want to say that I want a padding bottom so that I get some spacing between rows of 85 rem. Then I want a display of flex so that I can manage the link and the span. Is going to be a position of relative. And I'm going to have a justify content space between. Now you're not going to see anything of this, just the spacing, okay? And maybe the spacing here. So let's address this as well. So this is shorten URL, and this was an H2. I'm just going to give it a margin bottom of 1 rem, let's say. Why not? Isn't an h2? Oh yeah, it's content. Yeah, it's not shorten URL, it's the content. Okay, so now I have more space. And you're not going to see anything like this, but space between, when you're using Flexbox, is actually going to set the two or the elements apart, as far apart as the space allows. So in this case, if I inspect this now, I'm going to have this, which is this, and basically the span is all the way down here, which is exactly what I want. Beautiful. So now, more or less, the page is done. Okay. And also, let's do this again. It's also responsive without me doing anything. Okay. This is one of the big advantages of working with like a minimal design. Now, I don't like this button, and I like here to have the clipboard so that you can click on it and you're actually gonna have it copied on your clipboard. So what I'm gonna do is get 2 icons. One icon is the clipboard, and the second icon is gonna go there, and it's gonna be a pair of scissors. And it's going to be a pair of scissors. So if I go into my folder structures, in my public, I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call it images. Okay. And inside here, I'm going to copy paste these 2 beautiful SVGs that I'm going to show you in a bit. This is the clipboard, and yeah, well, this is SVG, nothing to see here. You can set the width and height from here, and you can set the current color, but by default they are black. But in the case of the scissor, it's going to go on this button, and since the background is black, I need to set the color of this icon to white. So I just set the color, the fill, to white. Okay, beautiful. Now that I have this, I'm going to do something extremely, extremely nice. Let's take a look at, where is my HTML? Okay, now there it is. Now I've given to the span the class of copyboard. Should be copyboard or clipboard? Well, irrelevant. So let's address that. Now copyboard is the span, but what I want to address is actually its pseudo elements. Let's take the before. And in the before, I can set the content to be equal to something. If I set the URL, so now I am in the style, so I have to go in the same folder, but into images, and I gotta select the clipboard, okay? So this is going to be my content, and this is going to have a position of absolute. This is why position absolute. Yeah, it's correct. What's wrong with this? Why is it saying that? Oh yeah. Okay. This is why I set on the shorten URL, which is the div containing the copyboard, the position of relative. So this is going to be relative to this div. And if I save it right now, you can see it here, like popping right here, which is super nice. I also want, or maybe I put it there on the copyboard itself. But what I can do now, I can translate it because it's just too much on the other side. No, it's not like this. I need to do transform, then translate, and this is going to be translated on the x-axis of 100%. Yeah, I like it better like this. I think it's paced a bit more efficiently. Now, what I want to do is actually to give it the copyboard, which is the div. It's not a div, it's the span containing this icon, an opacity of 0.7 or 0.6, and also a cursor of pointer, so that when you go over it, you can see the little hand like this. Let's give it a little smaller like this, really faded like this, yeah. And then what I'm gonna do is just to say copyboard select the hover state and say, yeah, opacity is going to be back to 1. Let's see what's the effect on this. And you see that it's highlighted when I go over it. Beautiful. Exactly what I wanted. The last piece now of this puzzle is going to be the background on the button. I don't like it like this, so I want to do the same as I did here. So basically put a pseudo element with the icon, and I'll explain why I do this. So this is the button, and I'm gonna just have another class, call it scissors, and I'm just gonna give it a pseudo of after, and this is going to have a content of URL. So I'm gonna select that image again, the same folder, and I'm gonna select the scissors. Okay, and this is going to be a position of absolute, and this button is inside the short form. No, it's inside the button actually. And as you see, the button is a position relative. So this absolute is going to be relative to this button, which is exactly what I want, because I can position it as I want. So if I save it now, I don't see anything at all, because there is no class, of course. But if I go back here and I add the class of scissors, is it scissors or scissors? English language. Okay, now you can see right here, there's a small scissors just in the corner right here. Now, I don't want the text, so I'm gonna just get rid of this text, because it's just, yeah, like this. Now, this is going to be a square, because if you remember, the height of the form is 2.5 rems, and I set the minimum width of this element to 2.5. So it's going to be a perfect square, which stylistically, I guess it's very nice. Now I need to move these scissors though. And how can I do that? Well, if I have this class and I act on the after element, so the pseudo element itself, I can just set a transform. And this is difficult. Transform, okay. And using the translate, now I have access to two axes. The first one is the x-axis. So I'm going to move it back horizontally by 50%. And then the y-axis. So I'm basically moving it up of 50%, okay? And also I can apply another transformation, and it's just going to be like a scale. So it becomes a little bit bigger. And it should look like this, which is fantastic. The animation still works, so if I press on it, it still works. This is the ultimate design. So yeah, I mean, you go here, you got the cursor pointer. This is going to be the shorten links. This is going to be the clipboard, and here you can just type whatever you want. And this is going to be managed by the backend. We'll see it next week. But right now, man, this looks awesome. Super minimal, but very effective. One thing that I forgot to mention is actually the fact that I'm using a pseudo element instead of just setting an image or an icon. And that is because next week, I'm going to show you how to basically link this, add an event to this button. Now, if I did it with an image or an icon over the button, so basically I was going inside the button here and setting up an image like this, sometimes this has caused some problems, at least in my experience, because you're gonna add the event on the button. And the fact is that if you are over the button, it's going to trigger. But if you are over the image, it's not going to trigger. And that is quite annoying, to be honest. Whereas if you use a pseudo element, everything is basically the button, so you're not going to have this problem. Of course, you can solve this by providing like a div which has the button and the image inside, and you just place the event on div itself. That solves the problem, but I think it's overcomplicating the thing. Pseudo elements are very useful for this, and I like to use them. Well, this was super nice, and as you saw, the design was very simple and minimal, but there is a reason behind it. Design is something that is quite personal and subjective, so what looks good to me might not do the same for another developer. So in this kind of projects, I encourage you to come up with your own design. This is really the moment to shine, to show off and stand out. Sure, I can show you how to use Flexbox, etc., but the final product should come from you. It is a very good exercise, and also on the server side, there is not much difference. Sure, there can be multiple ways to do something, but the logic to create a user, for example, would be similar, if not identical, among all web applications. So try to challenge yourself with a kick-ass design. This being said, I think this is all for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and share. And if you'd like to see more content like this one, well, think about subscribing to this channel. I really hope to see you at the next video. And as always, stay tuned for more, and bye bye.